Hi, welcome back to my Fusion tutorial series. This is lesson number 3. In this lesson, we're going to be covering masking using Bezier curves. But before we do that, I want to clarify something that a viewer asked about that has to do with node versioning. So we're going to jump in and clarify that. Then we're going to take a quick look at how to modify Fusion elements that are built into Resolve. And then we'll look at how Fusion accepts media. Once all that's out of the way, we'll jump into the Bezier masking at the end of the lesson. So with all of that being said, here we go. I got a question from a viewer about versioning and how to deal with part of the UI, so we have a timeline here with a couple that are playing a game of chess. We'll jump over into Fusion with that clip. You can see I already have some nodes defined for this clip. We have media in 1, media out 1, merge 1, transform 1, and text 1. The merge node allows us to overlay our text onto the footage, and the transform lets us reposition the text down to the bottom of the frame, as you'll see in just a moment. So right now you notice that the text node is dimmed, meaning that it's disabled. If I select the text node, we can see up here in the inspector that text 1 is selected but disabled, so we'll enable it. We can see it puts the text Sunday Chess on the screen here. It does a very simple animation with this. Selecting the node editor pane to make it active, I'm going to hit the opening brace to go to the first frame of our time ruler. I'll hit the spacebar to play it. You can see it spells out Sunday Chess for us. Now, let's say I want a different version of this text node and I want it to say something different here. So I come up to here and I click on the versions icon to enable that, and now I can see I have 6 possible versions available. Notice that all of them except for number 1 are grayed out. And the reason for this is because they don't contain any node data in them yet. If I click on 2, it will be highlighted. Back to 1, you can now see 2 is highlighted since it has had all of the node settings from version 1 copied over to it. That means it has version data in it. So we can change the text here to say Sunday Chess and a glass of red. Now I have another version. If I go back to 1, we can see it just says Sunday Chess, and number 2 says Sunday Chess and a glass of red. From here, I'll select the node edit panel, and I'll hit the open brace key to send the playback head to frame 0. We'll play that back with the spacebar. Okay, all of that worked just fine. Now we'll go over to 3 here and we'll add one more. The big rematch. Now we come back and we can see we have Sunday Chess and a glass of red, Sunday Chess, and now we also have the big rematch. Previously I stated that in order to clear one of these out, you had to right mouse click on it and select clear. But notice when I right mouse clicked on the 3rd version here, clear is disabled and I cannot do anything with it. And the reason for that is in order to clear a version, you can't have it be the active version. So if I was to right mouse click on 2, you can see that clear is enabled now. The same thing is true for version 1. Now I only have 1 version, so it's not going to let me clear that. Once you're down to 1 version, you can turn off the version feature and that list will go away. When we come back in, it has retained our version here. If I select one of the other version locations, it's going to copy all the settings that I have on my current version over to the new version. And then I can type in Sunday Chess, and we have a new version with 2 and 3 selected now. I'll clear out 2, 3, and now I can turn off the versions feature. All right, let's move on to our built-in Fusion tools and how to modify and learn from those, followed up by a brief look at bringing media into Fusion. The next thing we're going to do here is we're going to look at a grouping feature that is used for organizing our nodes. So it kind of falls into the category of the previous video where we were organizing nodes, but in this instance I want to go over it because it's useful for another feature that Resolve and Fusion have that can help you learn more about Fusion. So right here we have our clip, and I'll go into Fusion. Now you can see I have a set of nodes set up in here for this particular clip. I also have a number of them disabled down here at the bottom. One of the things I wanted to point out here was that if you select multiple nodes like that, the inspector will show you the header for each of those nodes. So you can adjust any of these elements oriented to these selected nodes. In this instance, I could go ahead and turn a node on or off out of any of these. Right now, I'm going to leave these nodes disabled down here. Here's another feature that we have when we select multiple nodes. I'm clicking and dragging outside to create a lasso and selecting them. I right mouse click inside one of the nodes and I get this context menu. Up around the middle point here is the group function, and this can be invoked with Command G on the Mac or Control G on Windows. I'm going to click on that, and now it's grouped my nodes together. This can neaten up your node graph very quickly. You can rename each of the groups and give them a name that references what the purpose of that group of nodes is. It's just another way to keep things very neat and organized. And we're going to need this in a moment when we look at another feature that we have that we can use to help us learn Fusion. Now, to ungroup these, we go back to our context menu, and the ungroup command is right here, and that will restore those back. We can also select the expand group, which is done with Command E on the Mac and Control E on Windows. Fusion then expands the nodes as a group with an underlay and opens it up so you can see what's in there. Then you can go ahead and adjust any of the nodes. Right mouse clicking will show us that to collapse the group back to its consolidated form, we still use the same Command E on Mac and Control E on Windows to do that. So I'll just do that with this set selected. That brings them back into their group. Also note that you can add and remove nodes and control the underlay the same here, just as you did with the previous lesson. And finally, if I just wanted to remove it from this group, I could come back and say ungroup using that same context menu, and it will expand them back out just as they were before. This is going to come in handy in just a moment. So we're returning to our edit screen. We have our clip here of these folks playing chess, as you can see. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit Command B on the Mac or Control B on Windows to invoke the cut or blade command and cut that clip at the position of the playhead just like that. Then I'm going to drag the end of each of these now 2 clips back so we have some handles. Then I'm going to get rid of the gap between them by selecting the gap, by clicking on it, and then pressing the delete key. Now I have a point here where I can create a transition. If I were to right mouse click over this cut point, I can see I can add cross dissolves, but that's not what we're going to do. If we go up to our effects library, your effects are broken into different transitions for the video transitions section right here. Down towards the bottom, we have the Fusion transitions, and these are special transitions that are built using Fusion, and we can use these to learn about Fusion. So for example, I have this film strip here. I can click this and drag it down into here and put it where my 2 clips come together, and it creates this transition effect. Now I'm going to close our effects window, click on our transition to select it, and open the inspector. Now transition is the element that's in the inspector. We can change a number of these settings here, but the one we're interested in here is this little magic wand. If we click this, it'll take us right into Fusion and allow us to see how this transition was created. So now when I come into Fusion, I have Media in 1 and Media in 2, and those are the 2 clips on the left and right side of the transition. They go into this film strip transition and out to Media out 1. We can see that the film strip is a group, so I can right mouse click on it and tell it to expand it. It brings it out into an underlay, and now I can look at how they built this. I can look at each of the nodes, play around with their different settings, change them, and learn more about Fusion by just opening up these pre-made functions inside of Fusion, inside of Resolve. I just wanted to show you that you have this ability to go ahead and look at these pre-built transitions and learn something about how they're done inside of Fusion. All right, we're going to move on and look at how we bring media into the Fusion page because there are a few exceptions on how we can do that. Here we are on the edit page and I have an empty timeline as you can see here. We're going to go up into the effects where we're in the title section of the effects right now. I'm going to grab this text element here and I'm going to drop it into the timeline, and then with my playback head positioned over the title clip, I'm not even going to bother to customize it for this demo. I'm going to go right into Fusion just like we normally would with any clip. And now inside of Fusion you'll notice there are no nodes because Fusion doesn't want to deal with this generic text element. You're going to find this to be true about other elements within effects as well. For example, if we get rid of this text and now I'll grab, say, a solid color and I'll customize this just so that we can see that it's indeed a solid color, not just black. We'll close the inspector and now I'll go into Fusion, and again, Fusion doesn't show us anything. Let's go back to our title and let's look at how we can bring this title into Fusion. If I right mouse click on it, you'll notice there's no Fusion composition option in here, but there is a new compound clip option, so I can create that and name it, and then I can right mouse click on the title element that is a compound clip, and now I have the new Fusion clip option available, so I can create a new Fusion clip from here. Back inside of Fusion, and magically here are our nodes, so we can modify this using Fusion. Returning to the edit page, I'll get rid of that timeline element. We'll go back to generators, we'll come down to solid color again. I'll go to my inspector and set the color back to yellow as we had before. I'll close my effects pane for the moment and my inspector pane. And now we have our playhead positioned over this element. We could say new compound clip and right mouse click again, and again we have a new Fusion clip option here. I can go right into Fusion and I have my nodes. So this is true for most things you're going to find in the effects library that are static elements that you can bring into the timeline. Now, one exception here with the titles is text plus. Let's bring a text plus into our timeline. Now, we notice down here in the lower right, it shows us that it's a Fusion element with the 3-star icon. So if we look in the inspector, sure enough, we have our magic wand. So if we click on that, the text plus gives us nodes, but it doesn't give us a breakdown of how text plus was created using Fusion, and that's because it actually wasn't created using Fusion. It was coded as a tool for use inside of Fusion like most other base nodes. It coexists right here as text plus, as you can see, so it's just something to keep in mind if you find that the element you want to bring into Fusion isn't generating nodes. You can always right mouse click on the element, create a compound clip, and then take the compound clip into Fusion and it will create a Fusion composition for you. We can also bring media directly into the node editor inside of Fusion. We can bring it in directly from the media pool. So, for example, right here I have this clip. I can come up to the media pool here and drag another video clip in. Now it will become media in 2. And that way I can combine other media elements within an existing clip that I'm working on. For this example, I can drag it right over to the input of media out 1. It will replace that connection to media in 1. And now we have this other clip here of this woman. Click on the blue part of the connector line and reconnect over to this. To get back to our original clip, I'm going to delete that video clip. We can also bring in still images, and this is a pretty common thing that you might want to do inside of Fusion. So here I have a JPEG and a PSD file of the exact same image. PSD is a Photoshop file. Fusion supports a wide range of different media types, so if I grab this into here now, I'll drag its output over to the input of media out 1, and we can see it brought in this still image here. I'll disconnect it and bring in our Photoshop image. We'll do the same thing again, so that's just another way that you can bring media into Fusion. Alright, we're going to wrap up this video by looking at some masks in Fusion. Masks are one of the most useful tools in Fusion. As such, they're one of the most commonly used tools, and that's why I'm going to go over a number of these. There are 4 of them that we're going to look at, although there are more than just these 4 included in Fusion. Another one, for example, is the mask pen tool. It's typically used for creating text writing effects, as you can see right here. One of the other common things to use a mask for is to have text appear behind an object or to use it to create a transition. So for example, in the next video, we're going to create this little 10-second narrative transition. I'll let it play. No.
But Daddy, all the girls are doing it.
What? Okay, as you can see, there was a transition that occurred between the girl's legs and this shot here. So we'll use masking to create that, but we'll do that in the next episode. For now, we're just going to take a quick look at the 4 different masks that we have available to us on the toolbar. Here we have an empty timeline. In my media pool here, I have this Fusion clip. This is just a regular text element, nothing special. It's been converted into a Fusion clip for us to use. And this is just so that you can see what the mask is doing as I demonstrate them. All right, let's head over to the Fusion page. We have our media in and out. And as we can see up here, we have our text displayed since media out is assigned to the number 2 viewer. Now up here in our toolbar, we have these 4 tools. And these are the 4 most commonly used masks. I'm going to select Media in 1, and I'm going to click on this rectangle mask. Now you'll notice that on our text up here, the ends of it have been cut off. The mask is only displaying what's inside the boundaries of the mask, which are shown by this green outline. If I click on the green outline, it'll turn red, and that's to indicate that it's the active mask in the viewer. We might have more than one mask being displayed in the viewer, and this lets us know that that's the one that's currently active. Now, notice that this outline on our mask is very thin, and it's kind of hard to see. But there's more than one way that we can deal with that. The main issue we have here is that this checkerboard background makes it difficult to see. That checkerboard background is showing us that this area is transparent or part of the alpha channel. So I'll come down here to Media in 1, and what we'll do is we'll add a black background to Media in 1, just like that. It added a merge node for us since I already had Media in 1 selected. Here's our background here, but the background is going into the foreground input of the merge node, and our media, the text, is going into the background input of the merge node. Now I could disconnect these and swap them, or I can use a hotkey to do the swap for me. The hotkey is by selecting the merge node and then pressing Command on the Mac or Control on Windows, followed by T, and that will swap those inputs for us. In reality, we don't even need this background element to solve this problem. There's another way to do it that's much simpler. I just did this with the background and merge because I wanted to show you the little swap input trick. I'm going to select these 2 elements and get rid of them, and I'm going to take the output of Media in 1 and send it over to the input of Media out 1, and we're back to where we were. Here's our rectangle mask once again. Now, if I go up to this menu at the upper right and click on it, you're going to see Checker Underlay. We can turn that off and we'll get a nice black background instead of that checkered transparent indicator. Now we can very clearly see the outline of our mask. So when you're doing masking, this is a useful way to make the edge of the mask clear to you and easy to see. And as you're trying to do precision masking, you're going to find that that's useful. Sometimes it's very difficult to see where the mask is in the image, especially if it's a very complex image. Over in our inspector over here, we have width and height, which we can adjust. Notice that there's a a little white dot that appeared right there after I made that adjustment. If I click on it, it will reset the control. And that's true of any of these controls. They'll create that little white dot, and then you can just click on that to restore the control to its default value. Another way to restore these would be to double-click on the name of the control. So if I double-click there or there, it resets those for me. Now we can see that the mask is displaying everything inside the mask. If we invert it, it's going to show us everything outside the mask. I can also click and drag on the right or left edges of the mask and it will alter the width. Same thing with the top or the bottom to alter the height. One of the other mask control tools we have here is in the center. We have the up, down, left, right control, so I can move the mask in those directions. I can click on this line right here and I can rotate it just like that. So again, I can reset all of these by double clicking on the parameter names and restore it back to the state it was in when we first applied the mask. Alright, I'm going to get rid of the rectangle. We're going to have a look at the ellipse now. I'll select the media in 1 so it'll automatically connect the ellipse to the media in 1, which it has done here as you can see. Again, it's showing us everything inside the mask. If we invert it, we see everything outside the mask. And again, we have the same controls in the center to move it up and down, left and right. All of the mask tools will have that. Now, on an ellipse, we can control the width and height separately, or we can have it do it where it controls both of them at the same time and keep the aspect ratio of the ellipse. So right now, if you notice at the top of the mask outline, it's white where the mouse is, and that will be true if I go to the sides like so. You can see it turns white. If I go to the areas in between the top, bottom, left, and right, you'll see it also lights up a little segment there. So if we adjust the top or bottom one, it's going to adjust the height, so it'll flatten it out just like that. The sides will adjust the width. Let's say I want to maintain that perfect circle, but I want the circle to be smaller. Well, that's where these segments in between top, bottom, left, and right come in. Click and drag on these, and they'll maintain the height and width together as a set. All right, on to our next mask. I click and activate the media in 1, and now we're going to add the polygon mask. Now you'll notice when we add the polygon mask, everything disappears. And the way that we deal with that right now is it needs to be inverted. We have the same controls in the middle here where we can move up, down, left, right, and rotate. But right now there is no mask. It's just active and ready for us to design our own mask. So, for example, I could put the first point right here. You'll notice it gives us a point here and it gives us these little points on the end here. These little points at the end of the yellow lines are called Bezier handles. These are going to come in handy in a moment. So I'm going to come down here and create this set of points. And then when I come back up to the first one, you'll see that a circle appears right there. And that tells us we're going to close off the polygon and finish the mask. So there it is. Right now, the upper point of our mask is what is selected. And I can click on any of these points that we created and I can drag them like so. If my little pyramid wasn't quite perfect, I can try and perfect it there. Again, we can move our mask up and down, and the controls in the inspector work exactly the same way as they did previously. Now, you can animate these masks, and we'll get into that in the next episode. A lot of times as you're animating a mask, it needs to change on the fly, and you might need to add a point. So you can just click on the mask, and it will add a point just like that. Or that. I have another point here that I can use to adjust the mask should I want to. I'm going to undo that and I'm going to get rid of these new points there. You can also select points and press delete to remove them. You can also select multiple points and click and drag them as a set. Using a lasso tool is probably the most convenient method for multiple point selection, and I'll illustrate that more thoroughly in the next video when we create the leg transition. Okay, we're going to look at this point up here. Notice that we have these yellow Bezier handles coming off of the point. These allow us to create a curve. So if I click on this Bezier handle and drag it, it will curve that point in the mask. Now I can pull it out and you can see it creates more of a curve, or I can bring it in and it creates less of a curve like that. Now, I can do the same thing on this other one, but when I do this one, now it's going to move the other one at the same time relative to the one I'm moving. That may not be what I want. The way to overcome that is to hold down Command on the Mac or Control on Windows, then click and drag a handle, and you'll drag just that handle, and it won't drag the other one in relation to it. So I'll do the same thing over here and bring this out. Now we have almost a bell curve out of our triangle. I'll come down here and we'll do the same thing. I'm going to drag this and you can see it wants to move the other handle. So we use our Command on the Mac and Control on the Windows and drag it and bring it out like so. I'll do the same thing with this handle here. We'll get a nice rounded point here. Now we no longer have a point like we did here. Come over here, holding down the hotkey to allow me to drag only one of our handles at a time, and away we go. So we can use this to create very organic shape. In the next episode, we're going to be using this particular mask to create that walking leg transition because we're going to need to conform to the curve of the girl's leg. All right, on to our last mask here. I'll select the media in OneNote. We'll come over here and we will select the B-spline mask. Now, just like the polygon mask, it has masked out everything in our shot. So we're going to invert the mask so we can see what's going to be masked out. Now with B-spline, it's pretty much identical to the polygon mask, except that it won't allow us to create hard turns or hard edges. Everything is going to be curved here. So we'll start up here just like we did with the polygon mask. We'll come down to here. Notice that there are no Bezier handles. I'll come back up to here. We get our circle, and there's our B-spline. So now our mask is this very organic looking circle here. I can click on a point and drag it, and it's going to influence the shape of that curve as we do that. Again, we have the same kind of controls to move it up, down, left, right, and rotate. We can also add points if we need them as we're changing and adapting our mask to fit other shapes. And I can click on that, pull it down as you can see. So very useful for an organic shaped mask. All right, that wraps up this episode. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked the video, please click like. That helps other folks on YouTube find the video. And if you click on subscribe and the little bell icon, you'll get notified when I've uploaded the next lesson in my Fusion tutorial series. So until the next video, take care.